What if I told you you could install this M4 style key fob on any BMW model and it would give you keyless entry, remote start, and you can control your entire car all from your mobile phone? Well, in today's video, I'll be showing you how to install this upgraded M4 key fob onto your BMW and take it to the next generation. So let's go ahead and start with this DIY. So there's actually a ton of new features that this M4 key fob is going to give your BMW. So as you can see, if you click the unlock button, the car unlocks, obviously. If you click the lock button, it locks, but if you press and hold the lock button, it'll actually roll up all your windows just like the OEM one. Now to open the trunk, you'll double click on the trunk button. It'll obviously unlock it, but now you can actually remote start your car using this key fob. So if we press and hold the trunk button and walk around to the front of the vehicle, you can see right there that our E92 is now started up. And that is an amazing feature to have for convenience or maybe the winter season. And so this is the OEM key fob that comes equipped in all of the E8 and E9X generation BMWs. And it doesn't look bad, but it definitely looks dated. It's made out of, a regular plastic shell that deteriorates and scratches over time. But you're now going from this plastic dated key fob to this brand new metal, sleek, elegant M4 style one. And so this right here basically allows you to start your BMW without inserting the key into the ignition. So it gives any BMW the comfort access or the keyless entry feature. And this new upgrade enables keyless entry, so anytime you walk near the vehicle, the doors automatically unlock. And then when you walk away from the vehicle, having the key fob with you, of course, then the vehicle is going to lock itself automatically. And now, just as if things couldn't get better, you actually get access to this mobile app that you can control your entire BMW from. So it's called Remote Key, and you scan in the key fob activation code once you actually get the kit. And you can see here we have all of our values. It's telling me my car is online. You have the battery voltage, the engine temperature. It tells you if your doors are open or closed, and you can track your vehicle anywhere across the world with this because it uses a 4G LTE antenna built in. And now my absolute favorite feature is you can start your vehicle with this mobile app. So here at the bottom where you see it says start, if we actually press that, you can set how long you want your engine to run, and we can start our BMW from our phone. And so you're getting this revolutionary new smartphone app with your upgraded key fobs on your BMW. And that right there is an absolute steal. So let's go ahead and show you how to install this on your BMW right now. So the first thing you're going to do is unplug your vehicle's battery. And now from here, we want to go ahead and remove the driver's side kick panel. Usually this is held on with 3 T20 screws. And now this is actually where we're going to hide the main control box that powers this entire retrofit upgrade. And now once those T20 screws are removed, simply go ahead and pull this kick panel down. We don't need to fully remove it from the vehicle. We can just pull it down. And now this is actually going to be the retrofit upgrade and all the contents that it comes with. So I got this kit from bovmods.com, and I was able to get a discount code. If you enter the code IZZY9X, it should get you some money off, but it overall comes with everything you need to do this keyless entry upgrade. And they have a little add-on for the mobile app that will come with the antenna you need to track your car or start and stop it all around the world. And so you can see here, the kit actually comes with 2 key fobs out of the box, and that again is a steal. So even though I'll probably only use one at a time, you have 2 key fobs that come in the box. And now this huge bundle right here, this is going to be the main wiring harnesses that are going to plug everything up and make it all work. And then here you have our 2 main control boxes that are actually going to power this modification. So since we already have the driver's side kick panel removed, we're gonna go ahead and come underneath to the factory brake pedal. So you're going to see a connector that's plugged in to the brake pedal sensor, and all you're going to do is unplug that. Now with the OEM connector unplugged, go ahead and grab your BovMods connector and you're going to plug it in its place. Now from here, you're going to grab the factory harness and plug it in to that BovMods adapter. And bam, just like that, everything is all plugged up. Too easy. Step 1 out of the way. And from here, this is going to lead you to the 2 main connecting points that are going to go inside of that control box. All we're going to do is grab that control box, flip it around, and you can see the 6-pin one here. is going to plug in, and then you're going to do the same thing, plug in that 20-pin connector, and bam, step 2 is out of the way. So now what you're going to do is grab the brown, white, and red cable that's coming out of that main harness and just tuck it off to the side because we're going to use that later. So this red cable here is labeled as power. Now there's a few points of 12-volt power that you could plug this up to. You could go for the OBD2 switch, but you need constant power. So we cannot use a cigarette lighter because that is a switched 12 volt. You need a constant 12 volt supply, and that's mainly going to be found in the battery. And now you can see here this white cable is labeled with lock. So this is actually going to plug into the locking switch. So we're going to snake it underneath the center console up through that locking switch on that center trim. We'll do that here in a moment. And then the brown cable labeled as emergency light is going to snake up with the white cable and plug into the back of that little emergency light on the center dashboard trim. And now to snake these two cables up, you're going to need to remove the center console trim. And now from here, you're going to remove your center dashboard trim. Super easy as well. You're going to use a plastic pry tool and lift it up out of place carefully. And then we can disconnect it and put it off to the side. So now these two harnesses are where we want to focus now, because this is where we're going to splice in the white locking cable and the emergency light cable. So if you look on the very left, you'll see this yellow and brown cable, and this is where the white locking cable from the BOVMods kit is actually going to splice into it. So knowing that, we need to come around the back side of the radio and the AC control switch, but I'm going to show you how to do this without removing the radio. So first things first, go ahead and snake the white cable underneath the center console. And now we went ahead and removed the little AC control panel. It's super simple. Use a plastic pry tool and it'll tilt forward out of place. And what you're going to do is snake the white cable behind it. And now if you use your fingers, you can actually feel there's a gap on the right side of the radio where you can come behind the radio as well. And now you can actually pull that white cable through that gap and around the back of everything. Now it won't interfere with our center console once we reinstall it. And now we'll trace the brown emergency light cable the same exact way. And so now what we can go ahead and do is use a knife or something to shave off some of that protective coating on that yellow brown wire, and then we'll splice together the white cable. So now you can see here everything is spliced together, so that is another step out of the way. And I want you to get that same wiring harness that we attached the lock cable to, and you're going to grab this brown cable right here. And this brown cable is actually where that BOVMods emergency light cable is going to get spliced in the same exact way our other one did. And for a majority of these cables, we're going to have to route them behind this left side dash panel and around the back of the gauge cluster. So you can just go ahead and remove that little panel and the gauge cluster out of the way. So here we're going to grab our gauge cluster removal tool and remove that. And then you'll also need to remove your small AC vent. So use some plastic pry tools to get that out of the way. And then go ahead and grab the wiring harness that's labeled as ignition switch from our kit, and then route it all the way through. We plugged in our OEM ignition switch cable to the adapter that came with the BOVMods one, and now we'll plug in the other end into the actual push start button once we're at that step. And now we can tuck this neatly off to the left side so it's all plugged back in, and we can pull out the wiring harness that's going to plug straight into the push start button the same way our OEM was, sticking out of here. And so now I want you to go ahead and grab the wiring harness that says bypass on it. And now the bypass wiring harness is going to plug into this box right here. Now this box is actually where your OEM key fob is going to get stored, and that's what's going to give the Immobilizer data so your wheels don't lock up on you and you're able to start the car. And then you want to go ahead and remove the battery from it and the physical key. So go ahead and pop the battery out of place and then keep the physical key with you. So it should look just like this. And now we're actually going to place the OEM key fob just like this. So you see these old black wires? You don't want any of them overlapping. And so now what I'm going to do is use some rubber bands to actually secure this into place so it's a little tighter, because I don't like the idea of it rattling around. And then now that it's fully secure, let's go ahead and put the top lid back on it. And now we can go ahead and plug up that bypass cable to it and put it off to the side. And to finish plugging this up, we'll actually have to remove the ignition switch from the vehicle. So now what you'll go ahead and do is grab a plastic pry tool so we can remove this black cover on the ignition switch. Sweet, and with that removed, use a Phillips screwdriver and remove the 2 retention screws holding the switch into place. Now from here, you'll kind of have to wiggle this out at an angle, but if you stick your finger in the ignition switch, you should be able to pull out the right side side and then the left side, and everything should come out just like that. So from here, we're going to go ahead and unplug the ignition switch, and then I want you to grab this cable that has this weird copper looking box on the back of it. So this is actually what's going to control the entire ignition switch and immobilizer on your vehicle. So what we'll need to do is actually snake this copper portion all the way up the same exact way we did with the white locking cable. Now you need to be extremely careful because the end of this is copper and it can break. So to do that, I want you to put it flat against the side of the center console and carefully snake it up. And then we're going to snake the copper part all the way up the same exact way. And now we'll go ahead and pull it out where the ignition switch is located. And now the copper coiling is going to communicate with the immobilizer. So we're actually going to place it around the immobilizer as tight to the front of it as possible. And now to keep it there, I went ahead and used some clear plastic tape just to really keep it into place. You can do something just like that. It's not going to disrupt the communications with the immobilizer, but this will hold it in place a lot tighter over time. And now you can actually go ahead and re-plug in that connector to the ignition switch. Now we have a few more connections to make to the main control box, so let's go ahead and get those out of the way. So here you have an NFC chip that is completely optional. This is going to allow you to unlock the vehicle using an NFC type card that's going to come with this kit, but I'm not going to use it because we're already going to get comfort access from the key fob, so it's going to unlock when you walk up to the car regardless. So go ahead and plug in this little 4-pin onto the back side of the main control box, just like this right here. And now here we have an extremely important component. It's going to be the hi-fi antenna. And so now this is going to plug in to the red connector. So you'll see a red connector on the back side. And then once it's plugged in, just put it off to the side. And so here we have another antenna, but in your kit, you're actually going to get 2 of these. So I need you guys to keep note. You'll have one of these that's 2.8 meters long, and the other one will be 5 meters long. The 5 meter long one is going to go to the rear of the vehicle. The 2.8 meter one is going to go up to the front of the vehicle, but you'll plug these 2 in to the last 2 black ports. It doesn't matter which one specifically, just plug them in. And so these CAN bus connectors are actually the last 2 that we need to install in the whole car. Now, if you have power seats in your vehicle, this CAN bus connector will fit perfectly and easily. You can plug it straight into the CAN bus connector located underneath your driver's side seat. But since I have manual seats, I have to take one extra step and wire it in manually. So for me, like I said, I'm going to actually have to drop the dome lights. So that's probably the first thing we're going to go ahead and do. So now to remove the front dome lights, we're going to have to lower the headliner a bit. And doing this is extremely easy, and it will help us tuck away a lot of the other cables that we're going to have throughout this process. And we're basically going to snake down this wiring harness all the way down through the A pillar of the vehicle and down to that kick panel where we're going to have that main control box. So go ahead and flip your sun visors down and you'll see this little retention clip that's hiding a T20 screw. So go ahead and remove the one on the driver and passenger side. Our CAN bus cables for my BMW with the manual seats are going to be this twisted orange and green one, and we can go ahead and tap into these manually. So I'm going to disconnect the end of the wiring harness from these points here. Now all you have to do is simply pull back the clear rubber and then use a flathead or something of the sort to actually pull these apart. But I'm actually just going to cut off this whole connection and then wire it in manually because I feel like that's going to be a lot easier. And now you're going to have 3 wires here. The black one is completely useless, don't worry about it. The solid orange cable is your CAN bus high. And now this is actually going to plug in to the CAN bus high on your BMW. So go ahead and unwind the twisted cables, and you see this orange and green cable from that twisted one. This is going to be your CAN bus high on the car's end. So you're going to connect the orange BOVMOD's cable to the orange and green one on your BMW. And so the orange and black BOVMOD's cable is your CAN bus low. So this is going to plug in to the solid orange cable on your BMW. And now with the CAN bus cables, you want to be sure you route them on the inside of the headliner. You don't want to route it on the outside because remember, we have to trace it down the A pillar so it's out of mind and out of sight. So you want to come up through the back side of the headliner and actually make those connections. And so now what we're going to do is grab a knife or something and shave down some of that protective coating, and we'll splice in our CAN bus cables directly from the BovMods kit. And now we'll go ahead and place some electrical tape over the top of it so they don't short out in the future. But this right here is good to go. And now depending on the location that you decide to place this Keyfob retrofit control box, you're going to have to extend out some of the cables. Otherwise, you're going to be getting pulled and they're going to have tension on them. So what I did is I just bought some generic red copper wiring and I extended out some of the cables that came with the box just by lengthening them. I basically just spliced everything together, and that allowed me to basically lengthen this entire cable, go all the way up the A-pillar, route it behind the headliner, and wire it straight into the CAN bus perfectly. And so now the final connecting point you should have if you opted for the mobile phone app and the 4G LTE antenna is you're going to have this wiring cable that says GPS. Go ahead and plug in that GPS cable into this connector that says hashtag or number 15 on it. And so this right here is actually going to be the remote key module that allows you to start your car from anywhere. And you can see if I pop this tray off, you can put your SIM card straight into here. So if you have a cellular plan with T-Mobile, AT&T, Mint, any carrier, go ahead and get another additional SIM card that can power data or even just like a minimum plan, and you can plug it straight into here and it'll work as a standalone. So what I did is I went ahead and got an additional plan from my phone carrier. So I have Mint Mobile for an example. And so all I did was activated that SIM card. I didn't attach it to a device yet. I just grabbed the SIM card, and then from there I inserted it in to the 4G LTE antenna. And the 4G antenna is going to take micro SIMs, not nano. So you're going to need some sort of adapter if you have a nano SIM. So now you'll go ahead and download the Remote Key app. And after you download it, you'll see on the 4G LTE box, there's an activation code. Go ahead and plug in the activation code and your license plate number, and you'll have immediate access to the full application. From here, you're not going to be able to get connected yet, but you can see you can actually start using the app as soon as you plug in that activation code. And now if you go into the settings, you'll see an APN menu, but this should have all already been done straight from the factory. But again, we'll touch this more once we get the rest of the boxes connected. Now this is probably one of the most important parts of this install kit is the grounding cable. And so I'm going to ground it right here where the seat actually attaches to the frame of the car. So you see this large metal bolt? I'm going to simply loosen it just a little bit, slip this grounding cable underneath the bolt head, and then tighten the bolt down on top of it. And that's going to get me a ground straight to the frame of the car, and I'll put some electrical tape over the top of it to mitigate any risk. And now if you have power seats on your BMW, again, this is a little more simple because the power seats are one of the only points in the vehicle that also gets constant power that's unswitched. So you could actually tap in this red BovMods cable straight in to the 12 volt power underneath your seat. So it's going to look like this. You'll have a little connecting point underneath, and you can tap this cable straight into it. But you don't have to. You can go straight to the battery. So this kit is basically made for any BMW. Whether you have power seats or don't, you still have ways of installing this kit. So it's very convenient. And what I went ahead and did is I actually removed this 12mm bolt that holds this thicker one on. And then I placed the copper cabling underneath it and then sandwiched that bolt straight back on top of it. And now that our main harnesses are all connected, go ahead and grab all of the antennas from the vehicle, and we're going to snake them outside of the car. And this is going to help us just keep track of everything and make it a clean install. And then all we're doing is simply lifting the kick panel back up into place. We're not going to tighten it down, but we're just lifting it to get a bulk of that mess out of the way. And then here you'll see the wiring from that ignition switch. You see how it's coming over the top of the dashboard? This is extremely ugly, but I have a fix for this. You're going to simply slide it to the very back of that side dashboard panel, pull it tight, and you'll see it kind of go out of the way. But once we put the side dashboard panel back on, we'll have nothing to worry about. It'll cover it up 100%. And now the best way to route this control box is tuck it as far back left and back as possible. And this is going to help this panel close while also not getting in the way of the brake pedal at all. And then once we do this, we can go ahead and pull all the antennas and stuff off to the side. And you can see that's going to look a lot more clean once we get everything installed. And now we don't want to be in a rush to close this kick panel. What we actually want to do first is, while we have all that slack still available, is we're going to route the antennas properly and put them exactly where they need to go so we can pull all the slack from the cables back into the control box. And so the first antenna we're going to install is going to be the 4G LTE antenna. And we can actually snake it up around the bottom and pull it up through that side panel, and then we'll pull all the slack out. And then you'll see right here, all we're going to do is stick it into this little side slot, and that's going to keep the wire out of the way of that side dashboard panel. And now from here, we'll go ahead and grab the hi-fi antenna. This is an extremely important one. So the hi-fi antenna is actually going to be routed up underneath the A pillar. And so the first thing we'll need to do is actually remove the A pillar cover. So use a flathead screwdriver to go ahead and pry off the little airbag clip. And then from there, we'll use a T20 screwdriver to actually remove the screw holding the A pillar into place. And now from here, we'll use some steady pressure to pull the A pillar directly outwards. What this is going to do is undo the clips without breaking anything. And now from here, you'll go ahead and get the 3M adhesive tape ready. So pull off the protective strip on it, and then we'll stick it onto the frame of the vehicle. You can see, you can actually place the hi-fi antenna, since it's shaped in that weird T, you can actually place it perfectly between the top where this clip is and where the little screw we removed is. And now we don't want to actually put the screw back on, leave the A pillar kind of loose. That way we can adjust the wiring. So now you can see right here, all I did was I got the wiring for that hi-fi antenna and I tucked it all underneath this trim, and it traces straight down to where I can route it underneath the kick panel. And then go ahead and keep the A pillar loose for now, because we're going to use it to tuck in all the wiring that comes from the other antenna. Sweet, so now that is two antennas out of the way. The hi-fi and the 4G LTE module are all tucked away nicely. So now we're going to grab the keyless entry antenna. So now you'll have two of these. The 2.8 meter one is going to go up front, and the longer 5 meter one is going to go to the back of the vehicle. So we're going to do the 2.8 meter keyless entry one first. So most windshields are going to have this black tinted strip along the top, and that's basically what we're going to use to shield this thing and hide it underneath. And now if you actually sit down in the driver's seat, you can see I positioned the antenna perfectly to where it does not distract me. You don't want wires or anything hanging down. And I put this antenna underneath where you cannot see it at all. The only thing you'll see is this white cable. And what you can actually do is go ahead and tuck the white wiring harness underneath the headliner, and then you can trace the black cable underneath the A pillar, and it'll be completely out of sight. You won't notice it at all. And then I'm not going to trace this cable all the way down the A pillar. What I'm actually going to do is use this little gap in the pillar to trace the cable back, and I'm going to hug it along the bottom of this weather stripping here. And that's going to give us even more of a clean finish that I won't notice and less work. So now you can see I tucked it just like that, and it's tracing from the antenna. The white connector's tucked away, and then it's coming down the front side, and it's tucked away extremely nicely. And you can use a pry tool or something to actually push it all the way underneath this weather stripping, and it'll be completely out of sight. And then all of the excess cabling that comes from it, because it's, it's a little bit longer, I went ahead and just tied it up using a little zip tie, and we're going to tuck it underneath at the very end. But now that our front sensors are all installed and tucked away, let's go ahead and go to the back keyless entry sensor. And this one's actually extremely simple. You don't want to place it sideways. You want to place this one up and down and hug the very, very, very side of this black panel. Now you can remove this large black panel and place it underneath. It'll be even more of a clean finish. But honestly, in the E92, it's really squished back here, and I don't feel like taking that extra step. So I'm going to stick it on as tight to the right as possible and then trace down that antenna right here. Now you want to be careful and route this antenna in a way to where when you pull the rear seats up, you're not smashing this white wiring harness here. So you want just enough height that it stays out of the way. That way when I flip the rear seats up, I'm not crashing down and breaking it. It's actually going to steer clear of it and not cause any issues. Now you don't want to route these wires to when you flip the seats up, it's sticking right out the side here. That just looks extremely weird. You have wires sticking out of your rear seats. So we're actually going to come along the outside edge, and you can actually tuck the cables back underneath this plushy part here around the bottom of the rear seat, tuck it into this plastic trim panel all the way up to the front of the vehicle. And something you want to ensure is the cables are not on the inside of the seat belt. So you see right here, if you have somebody in the back seat, you don't want them to put the seatbelt on and pull this entire cable out of place. So you want to route this antenna along the outside of the seat belt. That way when someone's in your rear seat, they don't pull the cable and put tension on it. So remember, outside of the rear seat belt. And now from here, what you want to go ahead and do is pull any slack from that antenna forwards. And all I'm going to do is do a few laps. So I'm going to go ahead and lap it back and forth underneath this black trim. And by the time I route it to the front kick panel, it's going to be the perfect amount and a perfect fit. And now you can do the same exact thing to the red power cable that we plugged up to the battery. Route it along the outside of the seat belt, not on the inside. You don't want it sticking out of the rear seat because that just looks extremely odd. And with the rear keyless entry antenna routed, the last one we really have is the 4G LTE antenna that sits on top of the dashboard. So I'm going to trace this up the same exact way. I'm going to have the cable behind the dashboard trim that goes here, and it's just going to rest on top of the dashboard. And there's some 3M tape on the bottom of it, but really you can place this anywhere on the dashboard. I'm going to place it behind my toll tag so it's out of the way. I don't want this thing sitting on top of my dashboard hump. So it's on the left side behind my toll tag, and that just makes it so it'll be out of mind while I'm driving, but it's up to you. You can place it basically wherever you want. And then we still have the Keyfob control box, which I'm probably just going to 3M tape to the center console just because I want easy access to it. And now one of the final steps we have before we actually fully seat the antennas into place and tuck away all this wiring is we need to program the keys. So this was giving me issues at first because I just didn't know how to do it, but now I'm going to show you. Just go ahead and grab a small little flathead screwdriver just like this, and there's actually a little programming button right here. So now we're going to press down on the programming button until you hear 2 beeps. As soon as you hear the 2 beeps, place it up to this control box holding the unlock or lock button. From there, once you hear 1 beep, that means that key fob has been successfully programmed. Now you can program both at the same time, but I'm not going to carry both key fobs around. I don't want to risk losing one, so carrying 2 of them that are pre-programmed is a little redundant to me. I'm only going to program 1 of them, and I'm going to keep 1 at my house in case I ever lose my keys. And now from here, all of our antennas are plugged up, all of our wiring is done, the keys are programmed. The final thing we have to do is actually test out these key fobs before we put together all of our trim and make this look like a factory finish again. So at this step, your battery might be dead on the vehicle from all the electrical work you've been doing. So don't be surprised if nothing works at all. That's what happened to me. So be sure your battery's fully charged up. And now that mine is, let's go ahead and grab the key fob and test everything out. So the unlock button works. You can see that the car unlocked. The lock button works as well. Now let's go ahead and open up the trunk. Double click the trunk button and the vehicle's trunk did open. Now what I'm going to actually go ahead and do is pop out my phone, and I want to test out my car to make sure that it turns on with the mobile app. So let's go ahead and give that a run. Power up the mobile app, and then we'll hit the start button. And bam, just like that, my BMW started up with no issues. So now that I know everything works perfectly fine. This M4 key fob upgrade is an absolute steal for everything that it brings to the table. You get keyless entry on your BMW, and you get 2 upgraded M4 style key fobs. Not to mention, you can now track, start, lock, or unlock your car all around the world, no matter where you're at. So that to me is an absolute steal and brings this BMW to the next generation. If you guys have any questions at all, please leave them down below in the comments. Hit bovmods.com. I think they have another install guide on there, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace out.